I found out my mother had drained every penny of the college fund my dad left for my kids and handed it to my brother when I was standing in the financial aid office at my daughter's dream university, watching the counselor's polite smile curdle as she refreshed the screen and said, "I'm not sure what you're talking about, ma'am. There's number 529 plan on file anymore. It looks like that account was closed last year." And my daughter, standing next to me with her acceptance folder clutched to her chest, whispered, "Mom, what does that mean? Did Grandpa's money disappear?" And my stomach dropped in a way that felt a lot like grief and a little like betrayal I hadn't let myself name yet. For context, I'm 49, divorced, and have 2 kids. Emma, 18, the one whose college dreams we were trying to make real that day, and Josh, 15, a freshman who thinks he has all the time in the world before we start worrying about tuition. My dad died 6 years ago. He was one of those Depression-era babies who hoarded rubber bands and saved coffee cans, but he had one big soft spot: education. "Nobody can take your degree away from you," he used to say, tapping my forehead. When the grandkids started arriving, he took a chunk of his pension and a small inheritance from his own mother and set up college funds for each of them. It was the closest thing to a fairy tale I believed in. He called me one afternoon, excited like a kid with a new toy, and said, "Every month a little bit more goes in. By the time they're ready, it should cover a good solid state school, maybe more if the market behaves. You won't have to break your back the way I did." I cried with relief. As a single mom working in HR for a mid-sized company, I knew exactly how impossible college bills could be. The day he set it up, he took me and my mom to the bank. I still remember the way he stood a little taller when he signed the papers. "You'll be the joint custodian, Mary," he told my mom. "If anything happens to me, you make sure these kids get their schooling. This money isn't for cruises or kitchen remodels. It's for their brains." He laughed like it was a joke. My mom laughed too, a little too lightly. I know," she said. "You act like I'm going to run off to Vegas with it." The banker smiled and slid documents through the little slot. I signed where they told me. Mom signed too. There was a paragraph about needing both custodians' signatures for withdrawals over a certain amount. I didn't read it closely. Dad winked at me on the way out. "Your kids will thank me when you're old," he said. "You can tell them their grandpa believed in them." After he died, heart attack while mowing the lawn, fast and brutal, the way he always said he wanted to go, those funds became a kind of sacred thing in my mind. I didn't touch them. I didn't ask about them much. I just pictured them growing quietly in the background while I kept paying the regular bills. Every now and then, usually around tax time, I'd say, "Everything's still okay with the kids' accounts, Mom?" And she'd wave me off. Yes, your father set them up good," she'd say. "They're fine. Worry about your own finances." She liked reminding me I was never good with money, which is ironic considering what came out later. My younger brother, Tyler, was the one everyone agreed was bad with money. He was the golden boy growing up, charming, funny, the one who could talk his way out of anything, and somehow that turned into a man who could never hold down a job for long, bounced from scheme to scheme, and always had a story about why it wasn't his fault. The boss was a jerk. The market turned. My ex screwed me over. A DUI at 23, a short stint in rehab at 29, a mystery business investment that wiped out his savings at 35. Through it all, my parents bailed him out. "He just needs a little help getting on his feet," my mom would say as she wrote another check. "You know how the world is harder for boys these days." Meanwhile, I was working full-time, packing school lunches, clipping coupons, and hearing about how lucky I was to be so responsible. Dad grumbled about it sometimes. "We can't keep doing this," he'd say, glaring at Tyler's beat-up truck in the driveway. "We're not a bank." But then Tyler would show up with a bouquet of grocery store flowers for Mom or an oil change coupon for Dad, and the fight would dissolve into football and meatloaf and me washing dishes alone while they laughed in the living room. After Dad died, Mom became the sole gatekeeper of whatever money was left. She got the house, his life insurance, the pension. The college funds were technically separate, but she had access, and I trusted, stupidly, naively, blindly, that she would honor his wishes. "Don't you worry, I know what he wanted," she'd say whenever I brought it up. Your father and I were on the same page. Standing in that financial aid office, staring at the absence of those accounts, I realized just how wrong I'd been. What do you mean, closed? I asked the counselor, whose name tag said Karen like a bad joke. There were 2 accounts. One for my daughter, one for my son. They've been paying into them for years. My father. She turned the monitor back toward herself, clicked a few times. The records show both were fully liquidated about 14 months ago, she said. The custodian requested a full distribution. I'm afraid there's nothing here now. Emma's face went white. So there's no money, she said. At all. We can look at other aid options, Karen said, defaulting into her script. Loans, work-study, scholarships. Plenty of students finance their education. That money was for her, I said, heat rising in my chest. My dad set it up before he died. He told us it would be there. Sometimes grandparents think they've set something up and it's more informal, she offered. Or market fluctuations can. No, I cut in. I've seen the statements. There was over 90,000 between them last time Dad showed me. It didn't just evaporate. Emma sank into the chair beside me. Mom, she whispered. Please tell me this is just a mistake in the system. It has to be, I said, but the certainty wasn't there. There was a weird ringing in my ears, the same sound I'd had when the doctor said, "We did everything we could about Dad." Karen printed something and slid it across the desk. This is all I can see on our end, she said. It shows the accounts, the balances, and the date of closure. You might need to contact the plan administrator or the bank for more details. On the printout under distribution requested by, there was a familiar name. Custodian, Mary Collins. My mother. I thanked Karen on autopilot, walked out with Emma, and made it to the parking lot before the first wave of rage hit. Grandma wouldn't do that, Emma said instantly, seeing my face. Right? Maybe she moved it to something else? Or maybe Grandpa had more we don't know about. I don't know, I said, which was maybe the scariest sentence I'd ever said to my child. Let me talk to her. We'll figure it out. I called my mom from the car. She picked up on the second ring. Hey honey, she chirped. How'd it go? Did they give Emma any free money? They're so stingy these days. The college funds are gone, I said. The accounts Dad set up? The ones you've been telling me are fine? They're empty. Closed last year. With your name on the distribution. Dead silence. Then a sharp exhale. Oh, she said. That? My fingers dug into the steering wheel. Yes, that, I said. What happened? Calm down, she replied, slipping into that tone she used when I was 13 and upset about something she thought was trivial. This is not a conversation for the phone. Come over tonight. We'll talk. I'm not waiting, I said. Emma is standing in a college parking lot right now thinking her future just vanished. You tell me right now what you did with that money. I did what I had to do for this family, she snapped, the sweetness gone. Just like I always have. You want to yell at me for your father's decisions, you go right ahead, but don't you dare act like I stole from you. My vision went red at the edges. Stole from me, I said. Those funds were for Emma and Josh. That's their money. Dad made that very clear. Your father made a lot of promises without looking at reality, she said. He didn't see what was happening with your brother. He didn't see that the boy was drowning. I did. I was the one getting the phone calls, the one looking at the bills, the one watching him fall apart. There it was. The answer I'd been half expecting, half hoping I was wrong about. You gave it to Tyler, I said slowly. Didn't you? Not all of it, she said, as if that made it better. And not for him to waste. It was for rehab, for his medical bills, for a deposit on a decent place so he wouldn't end up on the street. You think I enjoyed it? You think I didn't lie awake worrying about those kids? Those kids were my brother's children from 2 different relationships, whom he rarely saw and never supported financially. I could feel bile rising. So you took money earmarked for my kid's education and gave it to a 43-year-old man who's been making the same bad decisions since high school, I said. Without telling me. Without even asking. I was going to tell you, she said defensively. Once he got on his feet. Once you calmed down. But you're always so dramatic about money. I didn't want the scene you're having right now. You waited a year, I said. A year, Mom. Did you forget Emma was going to college? Did you think that wouldn't come up? I thought by then Tyler would have paid some back, she said, and for the first time her voice cracked. He promised, Hannah. He promised he would pay it back before it was needed. He said he had a plan, a business idea. I believed him. Emma was staring at me, pale eyes wide. I stepped out of the car so she wouldn't hear the next part, though she probably already knew enough. Whether you believed him or not, you had no right, I said. Dad trusted you to protect that money. You were the custodian. There were rules. Don't talk to me about rules, she snapped. Where were your rules when Tyler was in the hospital? When the collectors were calling every hour? When he said he might as well put a bullet in his head because no one cared if he lived or died? Was I supposed to just let my son die so your daughter could have some fancy dorm? Is that what you would have done? And there it was, the guilt grenade lobbed right into the middle of my fury. I pictured Tyler pale in a hospital bed. For in his arm, Mom at his side, clutching his hand. I'd been there. I'd seen the way her whole world shrank to the beeping monitors and his shallow apologies. You could have told me, I said softer. We could have figured something out together. Payment plans. Loans. Anything. Instead, you decided unilaterally that my kid's future was your emergency fund. You have a job, she said. You have a degree. You're good with people. You'll land on your feet. Tyler, he's always been different. He can't handle what you can. You're strong. He's fragile. That was the story of our lives in one neat sentence. I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. That night, after I'd tucked a sobbing Emma into bed and told her over and over that we would find a way, I sat at my kitchen table with a bottle of cheap wine and the printout from the college. I thought about Dad's voice. For their brains, he'd said, tapping the folder that day. Not for anything else. The next morning I called the bank. I asked for every statement, every record related to the 529 plans from the day they were open to the day they were closed. It took a week and a supervisor, but they mailed me a thick packet. I spread it out on the table like a terrible scrapbook. For years, the balances had crept up steadily. Contributions, mild growth, a dip in 2020 when the market tanked, then a recovery. Then 14 months ago, 2 big red lines. Distribution full balance. One for Emma's account. One for Josh's. Under authorization, there were scanned forms with my mother's shaky signature, and another signature that was supposed to be mine. Only it wasn't. At least not from any pen I'd ever held. The H in my name curved wrong. The last name had a little flourish I'd dropped back in college. My stomach dropped again. I called the bank. I never signed these, I said, voice shaking. These are forged. What is your process for verifying signatures? The woman on the phone sounded nervous. If the custodian is present in person, sometimes the second signature can be faxed in, she said. If it's on file. My signature on file is from the day we opened the accounts, I said. This doesn't match. Ma'am, if you believe there was fraud, we can open an investigation, she said. But if the alleged perpetrator is a family member, it can get complicated. Everything about this was complicated. I hung up and called an attorney. I thought I was calling about money. It turned out I was calling about what happens when you stop letting family be the excuse for anything. His name was David, and he specialized in estate and financial abuse cases. I sat in his office with my stack of papers and my fraying nerves and told him the story, from Dad's proud announcement to the forged signatures. He didn't look surprised. Unfortunately, this is more common than you'd think, he said. Grandparent sets up a fund, names a trusted relative as custodian. That person hits a rough patch or has a troubled child. And suddenly the money is borrowed with every intention of paying it back. Then life happens. The kids grow up. The bill comes due. Borrowed, I repeated. She keeps saying that. Like it's a loan between friends. It's not, he said. Legally, those funds belong to the beneficiary, your children. Your mother had a fiduciary duty to use them in their best interest. Taking them without consent, for any purpose other than their education, is a breach of that duty at best and theft at worst. The forged signature makes it worse. What can we do? I asked. Realistically, he laid out the options. We could file a police report for fraud and forgery. We could sue my mother civilly on behalf of my kids, seeking to recover the funds. We could also go after Tyler if we could show the money went to him and that he knew the source. But none of it was simple. If you go the criminal route, be prepared for the DA to look at the family dynamics, he warned. They don't like these cases. They'd rather you handle it civilly. And civil cases cost money. There's no guarantee we recover anything, even if we win, if she doesn't have assets. She has the house, I said. The same house my dad had worked 30 years to pay off. The house with the rose bushes he'd planted, where we'd once put our Christmas tree. David nodded. That's likely where the money would come from, he said. Equity in the house, savings, maybe retirement accounts. So I'd be forcing my mother to sell her home, I said, the words tasting bitter. Potentially, he said. You have to ask yourself, is the principal and your children's future worth that cost to your family relationships? I thought about Emma's face in that office. About the way she'd started apologizing, as if not having enough money for college was somehow her fault. I thought about Josh, who didn't even know yet that his nest egg was gone. I thought about my mom, sitting in that house full of Dad's ghost, convinced she was the martyr in everyone's story. Let's start with a letter, I said finally. Maybe she'll see reason. David drafted a formal demand letter. It spelled out in dry legal language what she had done. Withdrawn approximately $92,000 from accounts held for her grandchildren, forged a co-custodian's signature, and transferred the funds to her personal account. It demanded that she repay the full amount within 60 days or face legal action. I hand-delivered it. I didn't trust the mail with this conversation. She opened the door in her slippers and cardigan, like any other Wednesday. Hannah, she said, surprised. I was just making tea. Do you? We need to talk, I said, holding up the envelope. She led me to the kitchen. The same table where she'd helped me glue macaroni art as a kid now held bill organizers and pill bottles. She opened the letter, read it once, then twice. Her cheeks flushed red. You got a lawyer, she said, voice quiet and trembling. You actually went and got a lawyer against your own mother. You forged my signature, I said. You stole from my kids. What did you expect me to do? Talk to me like a human being, she snapped. Not like some criminal. After everything I've done for this family, you think I deserve this? I did talk to you, I said, feeling my own control slip. On the phone. You called me dramatic. You acted like I was overreacting to the fact that you emptied my children's college accounts. What would you call that? I call it doing what your father couldn't, she said. He would have wanted me to help his son. Blood of his blood. He worried himself sick over Tyler. He would have wanted his grandkids to go to college, I shot back. He said it over and over. He looked me in the eye and made me promise not to let anyone divert that money. Her eyes flashed. You're twisting, she said. He said family takes care of family. That's what I did. I took care of your brother. Your kids can still go to school. They have loans, scholarships. They won't starve. Tyler would have. He was on the edge. You weren't there. I wasn't there because you didn't tell me how bad it was, I said. You kept me out of the loop like always. You made me the responsible one, the one who didn't need help, so you could pour everything into him and still feel like a good mother. Tears spilled over. He is my son, she said. What was I supposed to do? Let him die? Let him lose his house? That would have killed me. What about me? I asked, my voice small despite my best efforts. What about how this is killing me? She wiped her cheeks angrily. You'll be fine, she said. You always are. You think you're the only person in the world whose plans got messed up? Welcome to adulthood. It's not all silver platters. This wasn't a silver platter, I said. It was a promise. You broke it. And you broke the law. She scoffed. Oh, please. Are you going to have them march me out in handcuffs? The neighbors would love that. I don't want you in handcuffs, I said, even though a small petty part of me did. I want you to make it right. I can't spit money out of thin air, she snapped. Tyler needed it. It's gone. We can't squeeze blood from a stone. Then we may have to squeeze it from this house, I said quietly. She went very still. You wouldn't, she whispered. This is my home. I've lived here 40 years. Your father? My father would be horrified by what you did, I said. He trusted you. You used that trust to rob his grandchildren. Do you know how that sounds outside this kitchen? Her jaw clenched. You go ahead, she said. You do what you think you have to. But don't you ever come crying to me when your children turn on you for some little mistake. Blood is thicker than money. You're choosing wrong. I walked out without answering. 2 months later, we filed the civil suit. She hired a lawyer of her own, a cheap, combative guy who looked like he enjoyed the drama, and started telling anyone who would listen that her ungrateful daughter was suing her own mother over a few dollars. At church, they prayed for her persecution. At family gatherings I was no longer invited to, she cried about how Hannah is trying to take my home. Tyler called me voice raw. Mom is a mess, he said. She's not sleeping. She keeps talking about how you hate her. Drop this, Hannah. Please. I'll pay it back. With what? I asked. You don't have a job. Your last business venture collapsed. You live in a rental she pays half the utilities for. Where exactly is 90 grand going to come from? I'll figure it out, he said weakly. Just give me time. You had time, I said. She had time. No one thought to tell me for a year. You only started promising to pay it back when lawyers got involved. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You know I wasn't kidding about not being here anymore, right? When I said that to her, it was dark. I was in a bad place. She saved my life with that money. Do you really want to undo that? Don't put that on me, I said, my voice shaking. You manipulated her. She manipulated me. I am not responsible for either of your choices. The trial date came faster than I was ready for. In court, everything felt colder, simpler. The judge didn't care that Tyler had been depressed or that my mother was 80 and lonely. He cared about documents, about duties, about signatures. David laid out the timeline. He showed the account statements, the forged forms, the transfers into my mother's checking and out again to an account with Tyler's name on it. He brought up Dad's original custodian agreement, the one that said the funds shall be used solely for the educational expenses of the named beneficiaries. We even had Dad's handwritten note, which I'd found in a dusty safe deposit box at the bank, labeled for Mary if I go first. In it he'd written, Please don't let anyone, including us, touch the kids' college money for anything other than their schooling. We can find other ways to handle emergencies. I know we can't predict the future, but this is one thing we can nail down. Reading that in court almost broke me. My mother's lawyer painted a different picture. He described a desperate parent, watching one child spiral toward possible overdose or homelessness, reaching for the only resource available. He called it a tragic but understandable choice made in the fog of crisis. He portrayed me as financially stable and capable of helping her children in other ways. He said words like family conflict and hurt feelings, as if this were a spat over holiday traditions. When my mother took the stand, she cried. A lot. She talked about Dad's death, about the bills piling up. About Tyler's episodes. I sat at that table alone, she said, voice trembling, and prayed for guidance. I told God, if you don't want me to do this, give me a sign. He didn't send one. So I took that as his blessing to help my boy. Maybe I was wrong, but I did it out of love, not greed. David's cross-examination was brutally kind. Did you ever inform your daughter that you had taken this money? He asked. I intended to, she said. One day. Did you obtain her consent to use funds held for her children's education? She would have said no, she said. She doesn't understand what it's like for a mother. Is that why you forged her signature? He asked. She flinched. I didn't forge anything, she said. I signed on her behalf. I know how she signs. We shared a bank account once. So you signed her name without her knowledge, he clarified, on a legal document authorizing the withdrawal of nearly $100,000. I'm her mother, she said, like that answered everything. In the end, the judge split the difference between the law and mercy. He ruled that my mother had indeed breached her fiduciary duty and committed fraud by using the funds without consent and forging my signature. He ordered her and Tyler jointly liable for repaying the amount, plus some interest, into new education accounts for Emma and Josh. He did not, however, refer the case for criminal prosecution, citing their ages and the family context. This court is not in the business of putting grandmothers and troubled sons in jail when civil remedies will suffice, he said. But make no mistake, what you did was wrong. They didn't have the money. The only significant asset was the house. Within 6 months, it was on the market. The day the for sale sign went up in the yard, Aunt Carol called me. I hope you're happy, she said, voice dripping with contempt. Your poor mother is being forced out of her home in her old age because you couldn't let go of some college fund. Do you feel like a big woman now? I feel sick, I said truthfully. But I also feel like my kids won't have to pay for her choices until they're 40. We all helped each other in this family, she said. Your grandparents helped us. Your mother helped you. Now you're throwing her to the wolves. Blood is supposed to matter. It does, I said. That's why it hurt so much that she didn't think my children counted as much as her son who keeps lighting his life on fire. The house sold for a little more than expected. The neighborhood had "up and coming" stamped all over it now. After paying off the small remaining mortgage, my mother's credit cards, and legal fees, there was enough to fully replenish Emma and Josh's accounts and leave my mother with a modest sum. She moved into a senior apartment complex on the cheaper side of town. Tyler relocated to a different state with some vague job prospect. I heard through the grapevine that he resented me for ruining everything, and told people I'd taken food out of my mother's mouth. Emma ended up at her dream school after all. Between the restored fund, a small scholarship, and work study, we made it work. She still graduated with some loans, but nowhere near what she would have had otherwise. Josh, who had more time to plan, threw himself into scholarships, dual enrollment credits, and choosing a cheaper in-state option. He jokes now that Grandma inadvertently taught him more about financial planning than any class ever could. I wish that felt funny to me. Most days it just feels sad. My relationship with my mother survived in a way, but it's something smaller and more brittle now. We talk on the phone once every couple of weeks. I take her to the doctor sometimes. I bring her groceries when the weather is bad. But there's a line down the middle of everything we say. She has never actually said the words, "I'm sorry" about the funds. The closest she's come was one afternoon when we were sitting in her little living room, watching her game shows, and a commercial for a bank came on with smiling grandparents in graduation caps. She winced and said, "Your father always did have more sense than me about money." "He trusted you," I said quietly. "So did I." She didn't answer. Later, as I was leaving, she put her hand on my arm. "You know I love those kids," she said. I didn't think." "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't think they'd need it as much as he did." She looked away. "Maybe I was wrong," she said. "It wasn't the apology I wanted." It was probably the only one I'll get. There are nights when I lie awake and replay all of it in my head. The bank, the courtroom, the for sale sign in front of the house with the rose bushes. I hear my mother's voice saying, "Blood is thicker than money," and I wonder if I failed some tests by choosing spreadsheets and court orders over keeping the peace. Then I remember Emma's face when she walked across that stage in her cap and gown, the way she hugged me afterward and said, "We did it, Mom," and how I thought, "No, you did it. You and Grandpa," and the part of me that finally stopped letting family be an excuse for everything. I remember Josh sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator and a laptop saying, "I'm glad we know the truth. I'd rather deal with reality than promises that disappear." I think about what it would have taught them if I'd walked away. That it's okay for people who love you to steal from you, as long as they cry hard enough about their reasons. That they should accept being sacrificed on the altar of someone else's bad decisions because that's what family does. That their futures are negotiable in a way their uncle's comfort never was. That's not the legacy I want for them. So that's my story, internet strangers. I'm the daughter whose dad set up college funds for his grandkids and made pinky promises over the kitchen table that this money is for school, nothing else, and whose mom waited until he was in the ground to quietly empty those accounts to bail out their chronically irresponsible son, forging my signature in the process. I'm the mom who had to look her 18-year-old in the eye and say, "The money we thought was theirs isn't," and then decide whether to swallow it for the sake of family or hire a lawyer and drag the whole ugly thing into the light. I'm also the woman who watched her childhood home get sold to make her kids financially whole again, who walks the tightrope between caring for an aging parent and never fully trusting her again, who's been called ungrateful, a traitor, and the daughter who sued her own mother over money, while knowing that if the roles were reversed, everyone would be telling her children to protect themselves. If you were in my shoes, if you discovered that your mom, the trusted custodian of your late father's college funds for your kids, had secretly cashed them out to rescue your brother yet again, forged your signature to do it, and then brushed it off as family helping family, would you do what I did and take legal action even though it meant forcing a sale of her house and being branded the villain in your own family? Or would you have let it go, told your kids we'll figure it out somehow, and protected your mother from consequences, even if it meant teaching your children that their future was always going to come second to someone else's mistakes?